Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsyreplays. Welcome back to the channel. Now, in today's video, we're going to be doing something just a little bit different. A video that we haven't actually made for a very long time, if ever. So basically, what I've called it is Wargaming have forgotten us. They have forgotten certain tanks in Blitz. And what tanks are those? The lower tier tanks. You know, we get in stores all the time. If you head over to the stores, there are loads of different tanks in the game. Occasionally, Wargaming may bring out a tier 5 tank, and then obviously tier 6, tier 7, and so on. And even sort of the tier 5, 6, and 7 is extremely rare. What they don't do nowadays is bring out tier 4s. They don't bring out tier 3s, 2s. Where are they? You know, Wargaming have completely forgotten about premium tanks in the lower tiers. Now, I know they're not that popular, and I know it costs money to implement these things, to build them, to build the tanks, to make them, and etc. And they probably don't sell as well. But there is a huge part of the player base that only likes to play lower tier because they have fun in lower tier. Not just because they're seal clubbing or not just because they want to up their win rate, but a lot of people play for fun, and playing low tier for them is kind of fun. Now, there's loads of tanks. If you look back, there is loads of premium tanks in tier 2s, 3s, and 4s that Wargaming used to bring out all the time. Now, one tank we're going to just play while we talk about is, of course, the Kennyotsu. But you've got loads, you know, the BTSV. This is one of them, you know, there's just so many. The T127, the T15. These are all really good tanks that Wargaming have just kind of forgot about. And even if you look at the collectible tanks in general, when does Wargaming resell these collectibles? Now, when they made premium tanks and tech tree tanks into collectibles at update 5.5, a lot of people obviously was happy that collectibles you could sell, and you can sell them for gold, which fair enough. But I was under the impression that Wargaming was going to sell them from time to time. I know you can get a few of them. You can get the tier 4s, etc. in the battle pass, which is good. But it'll be nice for Wargaming to actually put some of these tanks in store. Some of the tanks you can no longer get. And they haven't really done so. They've done it the odd time, but the T150, which I'm making a video on as we speak, when was that come for sale? And that's a brilliant tank, an absolutely brilliant tank, but you just never see it no more. It was a tech tree tank. It got replaced by the KV2 as part of the tech tree, and it got made as a collectible, and it was a brilliant tank, and they should have never removed it because the KV2 plays nothing like the KV3, 4, and so on, the ST and whatever, whereas the T150 was a brilliant tank for that. It's a tier 6, and it made you learn, you know. So as soon as you got to the KV3 or as soon as you got to the KV4, you already kind of knew how to play it because you've learned that in tier 6. You can't do that when you're driving the KV2. And again, as premium tanks, there's loads of premium tanks. Wargaming used to sell these premium tanks all the time. In the next battle we're going to have another game where we're up against a couple of them that were brilliant, absolutely brilliant premium tanks that they've now made into collectors, and they just never sell. And I'd love for Wargaming to actually revisit the stores. You know, it's not all about tier 10 or it's not all about tier 8, tier 7, tier 9. It's about all the tiers. You know, there are some people out there that do play all of the tiers, and I think Wargaming definitely need to cater for that, you know, because like here, for example, we've got loads in this game, absolutely loads. Obviously, you've got the Kennyotsu, which, yeah, of course, that they're never going to sell again because it's just broken and they didn't mean to do it. But the T15, for example, absolutely brilliant tier 3, really good DPM, really quick firing gun, no armor, but it was a brilliant tank. The SU-76I Claw, amazing tank destroyer. It really, really was. It was so good. And of course, the legend itself, the Panzer IIJ. Just they don't sell them anymore, and it is very frustrating. And I know I'm not going to be the one that does play lower tiers, so it doesn't affect me as much. But again, there are a huge amount of the player base that do play these lower tiers, and yeah, I know they're not going to sell a lot of them, but if you sell the Panda 2J there in the store, it will still sell. If you sell it for cheap enough, it will still sell. It's always been like a meme tank where people, even OP players, just go and play it for a bit of fun, you know, just a bit of wind down. And some people do that. Some people that don't care about stats do like a bit of a wind down, and they want to drop down the tiers and play a little bit of, have a little bit of fun. Hence why some people still play the Kenny Hotsu, just for a bit of fun. The Panzer 2J is again the same stuff. People still play the Panzer 2J. You roll the Panzer 2J up against tier 2s and tier 1s, nobody's penning it. Literally hardly anybody frontally is going to penetrate that tank. And it was a meme, and you know, I used to play it when I was in the Phoenix clan, which was at the time one of the best clans in EU, and I used to play it with someone called Bob, which was a very, very good friend of mine, one of the best players on the EU server back then. 70% win rate, 2,500 or whatever it is average damage, but occasionally we would drop down to tier 3 to play a double Panzer 2Js because it was fun and we didn't really care about stats. But yeah, you can't really do that anymore, especially for the newer player, because these tanks no longer exist because they made them into collectibles rather than premiums, and they're just never ever selling them. And it's a shame because there are some good tanks out there, and I for one would definitely call for Wargaming to resell these tanks, you know, not all the time, because obviously there was a reason why they removed all these tanks and put them as collectors. But yeah, selling one every now and again, I definitely won't think will hurt. You know, they're bringing out all these new tanks, the tier 8s, the tier 9s, the tier 10s, but just never lower tier tanks. And here comes the Ice Claw, which is just going to absolutely destroy me as soon as he turns around. Look how quick he turns around. I used to love the Claw. It was a fun tank, good HE, but yeah, those of you that won't have been around since before 5.5 will never probably experience these tanks, and I think people should be able to experience these tanks. Wargaming need to resell some of these tanks. They need to bring out new tanks as well, not just bring some of the old tanks back, but they need to bring out new tanks that have never been played before in lower tiers, not just higher tiers. And when I'm talking about lower tiers, yes, I am talking about the tier 2s, the tier 3s, the tier 4s, the tier 5s, and of course the tier 6s, because you just don't see it anymore. Wargaming have forgotten about lower tiers, and they should bring it back. They should bring back the love for the lower tier tanks as well. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with me. If you don't play lower tiers, you know, and it doesn't affect you, then, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to turn around and say, no, they shouldn't, because it doesn't affect you. But I, for one, do think they need to do it. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm meadsy69, and I'll catch you all soon. Bye-bye.